is a lot of people get stuck because we've got so many choices. We get stuck, and so we don't make any. And so we get stuck. You're talking earlier about people getting stuck. I think it comes from not making a decision because people are trying to hedge their bets. Sometimes you've just got to go, do you know what? I'm actually not going to lock in anything this week because I've got this, and just commit to it. Will you miss something? Possibly, but will you get more back because you've made a decision and now that's out of your head and you can just focus on this thing? Sure. So I think sometimes when there's so many things to choose from, I think sometimes you've just got to make the best decision you can with the information that you have at the time and lock it in and be okay with that decision.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us on another episode of Entrepreneurial Truth. On today's podcast, we have Kylie Liotta with us. Kylie, thanks for being here today. I'd love for you to just jump right in, share your story, and tell everyone a little bit about you, what business you're in, and how you serve.
Yeah, so I have this running joke that I was kind of like an accidental business owner, accidental entrepreneur. I had a government job for a very long time, and I did the very dutiful thing. You grow up, you go to university, you go to get a permanent, secure job. You do the safe path. And for the most part, I really, really loved what I did. I was changing lives, and that was really, really great. In 2019, I had an injury, and it was very interesting timing because I was going through some transitions in my personal life. I had children going to primary school, children going to high school. And I remember sitting back going, well, if I can't do this, what am I going to do? And having a bit of a crisis of identity, because for so long my identity had been wrapped up in the role that I had done versus, separating myself from my job. And so that led me down a little bit of a rabbit hole. And so over this period of time, I did a bit of exploration. And really what had happened was I had settled for what was safe. But it's not what I loved. And when I was really honest with myself, I wasn't showing up necessarily the way that I wanted or that I felt that I could. And so that also then set a little bit of a burning spark in me to go, well, what would that look like? And so I transitioned out of my full-time government job as a single parent of 3 children in COVID in 2020, because, who doesn't? And that led me into this path of coaching. And what I started out doing is my background is complex behavior, trauma, disability, very mental health, all of the very difficult pointy end kind of things. But really underlying that was helping people understand what was going on behind the scenes and helping people make better choices moving forward. And that's the part of the work that I absolutely loved. So that evolution started. And then that entrepreneurial part came and, I like doing this and I like doing this, and adding on and different, different things along the way. So which brings us to 2026. Can you believe it already? Cannot even believe it. And so that has led us to an evolution of what that looks like. So individual, but also group and high performance teams. And the reason that that's so important is when I look back, I had many more examples of leaders that I didn't want to be than leaders that I did. And I wanted to understand what that looked like. And I wanted to help people that were really good people be the best leaders that they could be versus suboptimal leadership, because then that's a flow-on effect for everyone. Not only did they not want to be suboptimal leaders, but the teams below them were affected by that. And so my theory is if I work with the individuals and I work with the teams, then we can close that gap and make the world better for everyone.
I love it. I love it. And I want to take you all the way back. So you are a single mom of 3
yes.
in COVID, yes. starting your
yes.
business.
Yes.
Did you get a mentor to be able to help you transition, or what did that look like?
So interestingly, how did that work? I had been as evidence, we were talking about this off air before, is I love to read. And I think so probably maybe a year or two before that, I'd been getting a bit of an itch for some personal development and personal growth. Well, I always have. I always love learning, but really building that into my practice. And I didn't have anyone in my life that was a business owner or an entrepreneur or anything. And like, my parents, my mum worked at a bank. My dad was a bus driver. They had good, safe, solid jobs. They did the, traditional get a home, do all that kind of stuff. And then, so I didn't really have anyone personally to mentor me. But there was a guy, he's a Canadian guy called Evan Carmichael, actually. And he was talking about, he started this little thing that he used to have on YouTube. And it was around, if you don't have mentors around you, look for people outside of that and take some of those lessons. And some people seem so far ahead of the game to me that the lessons didn't really resonate. So I looked at different things and I just did a lot of research, both online, reading, and then I just took the lessons that I could apply into my own circumstances right then to take me to the next step. I think one of the things that I realized about myself that maybe I had not realized or was less appreciative of is how much tenacity and grit that I had when I decided I wanted something. I escaped DV in 2013. And so this ongoing evolution of who I was something I was really hungry for and not settling for less than. And so this, once I latch onto, well, I want to be more than this, I'm pretty a tenacious reader, pretty tenacious learner. And so I just, in trial and error, and until I could get myself into a position where I actually found myself in rooms with people that could mentor me. So I didn't start out with a mentor, but by doing some of the learning and doing some of the work, that allowed me to go and play in different rooms and then find alignment to then get me to the next stage of my journey. So it was interesting because it didn't start off probably with that traditional get a mentor, use that person. It started off with my own tenacity that grew into me being in the right rooms to find the right mentor to get to the next level.
And then you're talking about like just tenacity and grit. Now, it takes a lot of that to start your own business.
For sure.
Did you have a nest egg or something to fall back on when you decided to take the leap? And if you did take the leap without it, what did that look like? And what actually got you into like the motion of doing that thing?
Yeah, so no, I did not have a nest egg. I borrowed a very small amount of money to get the setup costs done. And then so how I worked it out was I worked out exactly what I needed financially to live week to week for the next 6 months. And then, so I just looked at all of my bills. I did a really solid budget. I looked at what my kids needed. I cut out anything that I didn't need. And then I looked at filling that part first so that I could be responsible and make sure that my kids were okay. And then from there, then I leveraged what else. So I lived on very minimal, whatever was minimum requirement for me for a long time because I believed in this. I think where I was probably okay mindset-wise was my background is education. By that time, I was in leadership in education. So my thought was, unlike, this burn the boats mentality, I didn't think that was very responsible for a single parent of 3 kids. So I left on good terms so that if I ever needed to, I could go back if I had to, right? Either as a casual or go back and apply. I think the tenacity and grit came back was once I left, I wanted to make sure that I didn't need it. And so not because I don't love being an educator, I love that role, but I felt like it had served me to the point it was going to serve me and I could do more good and serve more people outside of that particular system. So I did have this very, very backup plan, but it sat over here and there was a bit of tenacity to go, well, I really don't want to ever have to access that. It's like putting the credit card in the freezer and saying only in emergencies. I really didn't want to have to access it. So that also allowed me to wake up in the morning and go, well, what do you need to do today so that you don't have to ever consider that as an option?
Oh, I love that. I like that you went there. Okay, what does that look like? What do I have to do today in order to move the needle forward? And the reason why I'm asking this is that a lot of entrepreneurs get stuck and they never grow, right? Or their growth plateaus because they just don't know what that looks like? What does the next step look like?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things for that for me. So I'll tell you one of the things I found really, really hard. And I think most entrepreneurs, not everyone, but I think in general, the entrepreneurs that I've met are a couple of things. One is fast brain thinkers. Their brains are very much always going and they're always thinking of things. I think that's a very natural entrepreneurial mindset. And I think that's the reason a lot of people are successful. I think two is that entrepreneurs by nature tend to be able to juggle a lot of balls. So the way that what really fills them up is being able to have multiple things on the go at any given time. And I think sometimes the traditional mindset around one thing actually is a disservice to entrepreneurs, because I think most entrepreneurs get really bored very easily, and then that actually moves them away from their goal. I think the trick is figuring out the right number of things that are your good juggling. I actually can literally juggle, so I can juggle 3 balls. If I juggle 4, it is messy and ugly. If it's 2, I'm bored. So, 3 is my sweet spot in my literal juggling journey. But I had to figure out what my juggling looked like in entrepreneurship, about how many balls I could hold in the air without dropping them, not performing optimally, and also not being bored. I think the third thing that was really important for that is I was institutionalized through the government role, in the sense that I knew that I left home at this time. I knew that I went to my work at this time. I knew I did this job at this time. And when you get out of an organization like that, you have to create your own schedule and routine. And that was probably one of the biggest things, because I'm like, I don't even know what to do with my day. And then my friend said to me, you can create the day that you want. And I'm like, this was a foreign concept to me, because it just wasn't a thing. It was always somebody else's schedule. And I had to teach myself, what did my optimal routine look like? So I'm a morning person. It is 5:15 a.m. here when we're doing this podcast. And I love that. But not everyone is a morning person. Mm-hmm. And so I think you have to figure out, where do you work well, doing what jobs when? And that was a bit of an evolution of trial and error for me, because I would read all day if you let me. So I've got to be able to get the stuff that I need to get done. Also, what were the relationships and nurturing of an ecosystem to get me the amount of work that I needed to get me to the next level, that gave me a little breathing room so that I could still do this work, which was future work, but also do what I needed to do right here and now, and not get too caught up in the future stuff, because you still have to do these little micro steps along the way.
Right. And I even thinking in terms of that, going out and doing sales. When you're working a regular job, sales isn't part of your scope, unless that is your 9 to 5. But typically, most of us don't sell on a daily basis. How did you even feel comfortable saying, hey, listen, this is me, I'm going out here, and this is it?
So this is so funny that you're talking about this. So I don't actually have a very positive association with this concept of sales. So in education, you get who you get and you don't get upset, right? So kids come in, you get your audience, and that's it. Even in staffing, you don't get to choose your staffing a lot of the time. You get told who your staff are. You don't actually get a lot of choice in that, and you have to make it work. So sales was something that always gave me the ick, and I felt really uncomfortable. And I've had to actually do a lot of mindset work around that. The way that I have evolved that for me is that I think about service and service as sales. So when I'm talking to people, my number one goal is I'm speaking to you because I think I can help with a problem that you're having. I would love to explore what that would look like for you. If it doesn't, that's okay, because I'm not everyone's cup of tea. But also, let's have a chat about what that could look like. And in the call, when I'm talking to people, I'm often already solving a problem for them. So they don't leave the call feeling like it was just a sell. They leave the call thinking, oh, actually, Kylie spent some time helping with this 1, 2, 3 things or whatever it was. Next time, I'm going to go back to her. And so I've been very, very fortunate that I haven't had to do I've not ever done paid ads. I've never had to do any of that. And my business is very full, and I'm very, very fortunate. But service as sales is the fact that a lot of my sales has come by my clients telling someone they should need to talk to me versus me having to sell myself. And I think that's been a huge part of getting my mindset around that. Some people are like really comfortable. I saw this really cool thing the other day where this guy set himself a goal of 50 sales calls a day. And what he did is he had a cup with 50 paper clips in it. And every time he rang up and made a call, he put one over. And so, but sales is relationships, sales is nurturing. If you got on there with the goal of helping someone solve a problem, half the battle around sales is already resolved, right? And I think when we get focused on what we need is I need a revenue amount this month, we've forgotten that the whole point of sales is to sell that person to help them solve a problem. As a byproduct, if you get that right, the revenue will come.
I love that. I love that. And what did year 1 and year 2 look like for you in your business?
Year 1 and 2 probably looked a little bit messy. You look at all these clips and like everyone's like all got it together and you're like, I know that's not the reality, but you would like it to look like that. It was a lot of finding my way. So I remember I said I injured myself. So I also was navigating how to manage my time and energy because I still had an injury that I needed to work through. So a lot of effort on pain management, a lot of effort on optimizing my energy. So what were those times of the day where I did operate optimally? How did I manage? Was I better off doing a full day of work, a full day of rest, a full day of work? Or was I better off doing mornings and then having afternoons off? There was a lot of that kind of things. And also, where was I spending my energy? So in my model, I talk about an energy audit. Who are the people, places, situations, and conversations that give you energy? What are the people, places, situations, and conversations that drain your energy? And because I had a finite amount of energy in that space when I was injured, that was less than my normal level of energy, I was really considered where I put it. I think so often in an effort to do all of the things and please all of the people, we tend to exert more energy than we have. And that's where burnout comes. So it was probably a very considered model of practice around energy until I was in a position where when you love what you do, 1 hour seems like 5 minutes. And so as my business grew and as my work grew, what I noticed was this correlation with how well I managed my pain. And the more I could do actually didn't impact my pain levels. So that was always a sign that I was on a good trajectory as well.
Nice. I love everything that you just said. There's so much around it. So, okay, I've listened to many podcasts and I've heard many people saying that it's okay to say no, right? Saying no to things to be able to preserve the energy, like what you're saying, and focus on the things that you do like to do. I've started to definitely implement that more. The no. How do you find time and delegate now that you said, okay, fine, the mornings may be better for work? And how do you really, if you are trying to basically hit maybe a target number, maybe you need to earn a certain amount, but you've said, okay, I find that I work better every other day. How do you then pivot, or do you keep it consistent? Like, what do you do in that situation?
So do you know the most profound exercise I had for me in this particular space was, so pick a number that you want to make, $500,000, for example. And I go, right, so what are my offerings? If my offering is there's a $37 offer and a $197 offer and there's a $500 offer, I need this many $500 offers, I need this many this offers, and I need this many this offers. And break down the numbers. Because when you sit there and go, if I've got a $37 offer that needs me to be part of it, then I need to do this much. And you're like, well, that's not going to happen. So your choices are you either up your price, which means you have to up your quality, or you, for a short period of time, go, well, I'm going to commit to this amount of energy for this amount of time to get these runs on the board so that I can then step back and go, well, I've now earned the right to up my prices to do the next part of that. And so it was so simple. Like when someone put it like that. So if you're selling a coaching program, for example, and you want to make $100,000 a year and your coaching program is $10,000, that's 10 programs. That's it. When you break it down like that, okay, that makes it simple. So what am I going to do to sell a $10,000 program? If you want $100,000 and your coaching program is $100, then you need 10,000 of those. So what does that look like? Do you need optimizations? Do you need it to be something sitting in the back end that doesn't take your time? In the first instance, it is going to take your time to set it all up properly. So what are you prepared to invest? And so doing a very numbers-based, this is what it would take to get this, just take all the emotion out of it. I'm a very emotional person. I love what I do. So it's a bit hard. But when you just simplistically look at the numbers, going, well, first of all, if I want to offer a $5,000 program or $10,000, what would that need to entail? Because it's so people are blessed for choice. If I don't have any runs on the board, so when I first started out, I did not have a $10,000 offer. I had a much lesser offer because I wanted to get credibility. So what are you doing for what? Are you doing it because you want to build testimonials? Are you doing it because you want to do this? Are you doing it because you want to do that? People sit there and go, well, I'm just going to create, there's so much AI out there now. I'm just going to do this thing and I'm just going to charge that. But there's still a lot of work that goes into getting that to a level that is functional and optimal. And you've got to remember there's so much noise out there. So how do you separate yourself? You could do all of that work and it not convert. Like I was talking to someone yesterday who wants a micro business and he's like, oh, I've got this really great idea. I want to do this particular thing with this computer part and I want to do this. I'm like, oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. How do you know people will buy it? So what's the testing that you've done before you go invest all this time and energy into this? Have you just tested the market to see if people are actually interested? Mm-hmm. And Daniel Priestley talks about if you think something, get a wait list for it. Anyway, there's a few different ways of doing that. But for me, it was simply breaking down the numbers and going, well, if I need to manage a day off and a day off here, so say I can work 3 full days a week in my business, is my metric that I'm asking for in this first year of business reasonable? Like $100,000 versus $1 million? Secondly, if I do look at the numbers, what are the ticket prices I'm selling and what would I need to sell to get that? And then look at what that looks like from there.
Oh, love it. Love it. Like you're packed full of tips, insight, and everything. I love it. So for someone on their journey, I'm sure you've heard everything in there. You need to basically figure out where you want to be, what products that you have that can take you there, right? Figure out your pricing model, figure out if you have experience before you do the pricing. So when do you, in that model, decide that you are now, for you, going to now work with teams? Because now you are supporting teams, right? When did that pivot happen?
So there's a book by a gentleman called Gay Hendricks, and he talks about this zone of genius idea. And he talks about, what your zone of genius looks like, what your zone of competence looks like, and what your zone of frustration looks like. And I have to tell you that my zone of frustration was reconciling the back end of my accounting software. And even sending out invoices, I hated it. I hate that part of the business. It is not my passion. It took me 5 hours to do something that takes my bookkeeper 15 minutes because I would procrastinate. I would do all these things. And so I got to a point where I'm like, okay, what is this costing me? So, for example, if I charge $100 an hour and it takes me 5 hours to do this nonsense, then that's costing me $500 every time I need to do this because I will procrastinate. It's a waste of my time. How much does a bookkeeper cost? A bookkeeper costs $35 an hour, for example. So I would have to work however many minutes to pay for her time. If she takes 2 hours a week, that's $70. I have to do 1 extra hour of whatever it is, the $100 an hour thing, to cover that cost. Am I prepared to do that? because it was so draining of my energy that I had to sit there and, this cost benefit analysis. It is hard because I've had a couple of different staff over the years, and it is difficult trying to find the right one. It's also difficult for you to figure out what you're prepared to let go of and what you're not prepared to let go of. But if I sit there and go, what is my zone of genius? And by zone of genius, I mean 5 hours feels like 5 minutes for me. What do I love to do, could do all day and still come away feeling energized? Conversations like this. I love podcasts. Coaching. I love all that kind of stuff. I love presenting. I love workshopping. I love doing all of that. I don't like this end. So zone of competence is things that you can do really well, but after a while will drain you. And then zone of frustration is things that you don't love, you're not that great at, you need them, but it is very frustrating to you. So that I just went through my job list of what that was. And then the first thing I did was, the minute I am in a position to do so, and I had a metric about what that was, I'm going to source this position first. And that then took away that thing. So that gave me 5 hours back already. Mm-hmm. So then I could add a client or two in. Or what was I going to fill that time with versus, doing that. So that was an evolution for me. So bookkeeper, admin, video editor. What are the things like video editing? Oh my gosh. And making things pretty on Canva. Hate it. I love pretty things. I don't want to be the person to make it pretty. So they were the things that I outsourced first. It's still my content, but they're the things that take my time and energy, and I'm not great at. So why would I, I want people that, you want a coach that loves what they're doing and they're good at what they're doing. You don't want somebody who turns up to the session because they hate it because they have to. So I think it's really important that we look at that. So that was a really good model for me to figure out what I at first needed to outsource and then when to do it.
I love that. And then for us, I know that's why we have that model, where we have automation do a lot of things, because it just takes a lot of the load off of you. And I'm happy that we're now in this AI space, right? An automation space, because it definitely takes a lot of the load off as an entrepreneur, especially a solopreneur.
Yes.
When you're starting out, it is a lot of things that you are juggling at one time.
Yes. But even figuring out like whether you have to set up the automation yourself or, it's going to take somebody else who's an expert in it 2 hours. So it'll cost you $100 or $150 to do it for you, where it might take you 20 hours to do the same thing, but it'll save cost. Well, is it really saving cost? If you're charging $100 an hour, 20 hours is $2,000. So you've just lost $1,800 by insisting on doing everything yourself. So it is such a fine line between what you do, what you get somebody else to set in, so then it can continue that process for you.
No, absolutely. And I think it's a mindset shift, right? Because we're taught that, it's simple enough, we can get on it. And then 5 hours later, we're still sitting there. It definitely is a mindset shift.
Yeah. And it definitely is that shoulda, coulda, woulda. Like, well, I should be able to do this. I'm like, stop shoulding all over everyone and just figure out what you need to do versus what you should do. I don't like back-end website stuff. I don't. I love this part of it. So could I push myself through it? Yeah. Do I want to? No. Is it better return on investment for my time to get somebody else to do it so that I can make money over here, so I can fund that? And I think it's just a personal choice. What are you prepared to do yourself? What are you prepared to outsource? What are you prepared to put yourself in front of and go, well, I'm going to work, and this is how I worked. If I wanted a cleaner for my house, for example, because that would give me back more time, cleaner costs this much. How much work do I need to do to be able to afford that above and beyond? And so I really just broke it down into the numbers. If I don't want to do this job anymore, what would I need to be able to do to be able to be in a position where I can get somebody else to do it? Even automation, a lot of software comes with a cost, a recurring monthly cost. So if it's $40 a month recurring cost, what am I prepared to do over here so that I can put that in place so that I don't have to worry about it? And really just step by step, write the list down, prioritize. Which do you hate the most? That's how I prioritize my things. What do I not want to do more? How do I get rid of that first?
Mm-hmm.
because that's the stuff that tires you out. That's the stuff that makes you resentful. Friday
Mm-hmm.
afternoon, reconciling my books, just give me a fork. Now I'm just going to poke myself in the eye. I don't want to do it. So that was the first thing that came off my list, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not what I loved the most to do. It was like, what am I? And that was motivation enough to get that off my list. So,
I love that. I love that. I love that. I love that. I love that you dived into that because, yeah, we definitely recommend it to people all the time. You need some sort of framework where you're doing a self audit, right? An audit on your business to see where you are, where you're trying to be, and, are you doing repetitive tasks that you can literally automate?
yeah.
That's
And I think
awesome.
we, as a, we have to do our taxes every year. That's an audit, isn't it?
Mhm.
Like it's an audit of what our books say. But how often do we take the time to audit our systems? Is this system still working for me? How often do we talk about, even hanging out with people, I'm in a networking group, for example. How often do you audit and go, well, do I show up because it's just part of my routine, or is it still working for me? How often do we just take the time objectively to sit back and say, I audit my business every year for tax purposes, but how much do I audit this instead of just being caught up in the minutiae of just moving forward all the time? That's something that's been a really big piece for me is I think in life, just in general, we stay stuck in things that aren't necessarily serving us because we don't find enough time to pause and do an audit to say, is this still working for me? And maybe it is great, but maybe it isn't. And maybe there's a tweak to it. Maybe it's not necessarily throwing it out. Maybe there's a tweak to it, but also it's okay to go, this served me up to this point. Thank you so
Mhm.
much. It now doesn't serve me moving forward. And I think the reason we get stuck in not letting that go is it sounds like, well, I failed because this isn't working anymore. But it did. At some point, we only repeat behaviors. We only do things that we perceive serve us.
Mhm.
So thank you so much. It served me for that period of my time, my period of my business, my period of my life. It no longer serves me. I'm going to do this new thing, and that's okay.
Oh. And then when did you switch over to the one to many in your business model after basically like sitting down and saying, hey, listen, I've done this one to one. Now I can switch to one to many.
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit, I don't know if privilege is a word, maybe it is. I think I'm very lucky because I come from an education background. One to many doesn't scare
Serious.
me the same way
Mhm.
that everybody else does. So I think I've had probably a little bit of an unfair advantage because if you've had to wrangle 1,200 people on an assembly, you're not really scared of that same. You've got to be engaging to 1,200 young people who couldn't care less about what you have to say. So I think the benefit of my experience made that an easier get for me. So I have been in the position where I've run workshops and training probably from day dot, and just now currently scaling what that looks like to do more of it. So I've always had a bit of a balance between a little bit of both. I started out with one-to-one because I just genuinely love it. I love the intentionality and the purposefulness around sitting down and taking time to genuinely have a conversation. I think the push for me to move to many, one was a scaling thing, but two was a serving more people thing. And the three was I love one to one, but I also love one to many. So it was just a natural evolution of where I wanted to be in terms of my journey. So I'm not sure if there was a particular moment in time. I think definitely the last 2 years, from a scalability perspective, there wasn't room. So when people would say, hey, Kylie, I'd love to work with you, I just didn't have any room left. Again, a beautiful problem to have.
Mhm.
So then I'm like, well, hang on, I need to be able to serve more people different. So that was an audit point for me. What do I need to, what's working well that I can continue, and what do can I evolve into something different so that when people are contacting me, I had space for them. So I think it was just a natural audit point and a natural love of what I do point.
Oh, nice, 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 nice. I love that. And that's an amazing problem to have, right? Not being
Mm.
able to take more people on. What are you doing now for growth? And where are you now in your journey?
Yeah, so I'm just about to go into some filming of some content for a new market overseas, which is really exciting. So I sat down yesterday and did a bit of a brain dump about what that was going to look like. Um, I I think for me in this futuristic, so I love to travel. I love international global work, and so part of it this last couple of years has been positioning myself so that I'm a bit more known and I can get out into some of those markets. So it's not just such a cold connection when I do that. So lots of different things are happening. I've got another book coming out this year. I'm going into this new market overseas. I'm looking at what that work looks like. My model of infinite leadership is a continuous improvement. So it's an ongoing evolution. So I'm constantly doing that work for myself to be able to walk my talk. And then looking at where I can just serve others more powerfully and what does that look like. So going into organizations, starting with the leadership team, but again, doing top and tail. So go in, look at the leadership team, how I can support them, look at what their people are saying, and then how do we close that gap? So that's the work that I very much love to do, and working with some incredible organizations in that particular space at the moment. So continue to do the work that I love. I think this is a very personal thing. I don't do traditional models of practice, or I don't necessarily do what I think everybody else is doing. So there's so much push for online and, set it up and you can run it yourself. You don't need it to run it, and you're going to make $1 million a month, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I do think that's a 1% club, and that's lovely. And I certainly don't dismiss any of that as a strategy, because I think it's a great strategy. But I love being in a room with people. So is my work going to focus on what I'm seeing on socials around, you should do this to get this particular thing? Or am I currently going to do what I love, and then that's going to evolve into something else, which is going to involve in something else? So I have, I play both sides of that fence. I've got some online things, but I also think if you do what you love, you're going to serve more people powerfully anyway than just focusing on the dollar number at the bottom. And as a byproduct, the dollar number will come, and then you can evolve. But I do think that gives you experience. It also tells you what the market really needs versus just throwing something on a wall and seeing what sticks. But that's, uniquely me, because that's an alignment of values for me about what I think serves people better. So for me, it's just about that constant audit, checking in where I'm at. I still have 3 kids. So, I want freedom, but I also want to do the work. So being considered, saying, okay, well, if I'm going to travel this year, what does that look like? Where can my kids come? Where do I need to go by myself? What have they got on, so I can make sure that I'm traveling in time? So again, just constantly auditing all of the time. I have this massive calendar in my hallway, which people laugh when they come in my house. But I used to be a teacher. So, but it's color coded with sticky notes with everything going on. Because that's how I keep sense of my world and make sure that, family is very important to me. So prioritizing, you can't have all of this going on that's really, really great if you prioritize family and then you're not there for any family stuff. So making sure that I consider and then going back to go, okay, well, what's a bigger priority for me now, to do this thing or to do this thing, and just make a choice. And I think this is the conversation I was having yesterday, is a lot of people get stuck because we've got so many choices. We get stuck, and so we don't make any. And so we get stuck. You're talking earlier about people getting stuck. I think it comes from not making a decision because people are trying to hedge their bets. Sometimes you've just got to go, do you know what? I'm actually not going to lock in anything this week because I've got this, and just commit to it. Will you miss something? Possibly, but will you get more back because you've made a decision and now that's out of your head and you can just focus on this thing? Sure. So I think sometimes when there's so many things to choose from, I think sometimes you've just got to make the best decision you can with the information that you have at the time and lock it in and be okay with that decision. And then next time that opportunity comes up, you might make a different decision. But I think some of the stalling and some of the things come from not making a decision because you're so worried about making the wrong one.
I agree with you. A lot of people are afraid to make a decision, and they spin in circles, because they really, really are confused about what it is. And a lot of that comes too by just having too many choices. We
Yeah.
we live in a society where we have infinite choices, and it can be confusing. A shiny object.
Yeah, but I also think we overwhelm ourselves, right?
Mhm.
So so I was listening to Simon Sinek on a podcast the other day, and he was talking about this concept of um, two, not three, and he's talking about this shoemaker, this shoe shop owner, who was saying how he grew his business is when women's shoes, people would come in, he would say, "What would you like?" And they're like, "Can I try this shoe on?" And then they go, "Can I try this one?" And he'd say, "Okay." And then they'd say, "Can I try this one?" And he goes, "Okay, but which one am I taking away?" Because three decisions was too many,
Mhm.
they left choosing no shoe. But if they only had two to choose from, they always chose one.
Wow.
So sometimes it's around how do we limit our choices? And my background is in disability and neurodiversity. And we often talk about stop overwhelming people with choices. So we talk about two decisions all
Mhm.
of the time because having
Mhm.
3, 4, 5, and I don't think I mean, I learned it from having this very long background in neurodiversity, but I don't think it's exclusive to neurodiversity. I think it's good practice to
Mhm.
go, right, these are the two decisions I'm choosing from. Which one is it? And so, for example, I'm going next month, I'm traveling, and I had to sit there and go, all right, well, if I choose to travel, then what are the things that I'm not going to do? But I can choose to travel or I can choose not to travel. I've chosen to travel, and there are consequences, both good and bad, with every decision that we make.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
So you've just got to choose for the most optimal positive consequences, but you've also got to accept the negative that come with that, right?
Mhm.
So with a client yesterday, we were talking about, she's like, I really don't like this thing and I want to send this communication that does this. And I'm like, bro, if you choose that, what are the consequences that could go either way for that? And are you okay with them? As simple
Mhm.
as that.
Mhm.
And if you're not okay with them, is that the right decision that you're making? But if you are okay with that, then great, let's do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's put it in
Yeah.
place.
I agree
And
with
it's
you.
a very simplistic way of looking at it, isn't it? When we break it down, we
Mhm.
overcomplicate a lot of things that don't need to be complicated.
Mhm. Absolutely, absolutely, and it has to sit well with you. And one of the times for me personally was with boundaries, right? So
Yeah.
when was setting new boundaries in my business, I found that I had to make decisions. I can send this email. It may sound this way, but you know what? That's a boundary, and that's also things that I think that entrepreneurs should implement, boundaries around work schedule. If they make a decision, stick to the decision. There's so many areas within that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think what we don't, so boundaries are really difficult, I think, particularly for women, because for a
Mhm.
very long time, it's not been okay for us to have them. So, and I think the risk is, I know when I first started out having boundaries, probably, overshot the runway a couple of times on, well, this is my boundary, because that's what I'm reading about. This is boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. But I think the middle ground is, I love Brene Brown's definition. I use it all the time. This is what's okay for me, and this is what's not okay for me.
Mhm.
As simple as that. So I used to have a client that used to ring me most
Oh,
nights
Lord.
after 6 o'clock,
Mhm.
and I'm like, I got to, and I would answer because I'm a kind, caring, supportive person, but I'd get off the phone feeling resentful.
Mhm.
So I would then go, well, what system can I put in place so that they don't need to call me at 6 o'clock, and I can still meet their needs, but I don't have to answer that call at 6 o'clock. And then I put the system in place, and then they still called me. And then I said, well, hang on, we've got a system in place. The criteria for you calling me is A and B. Outside of that, I'm not answering my phone.
Mhm.
And I had to trust, I had to be okay with, they may not like that and they may choose not to be my client anymore, or they're going to get on board and they're going to respect that boundary. And they did, because
Mhm.
we sometimes we don't give people enough credit
Right.
that if we articulate it, a
Mhm.
lot of the time when people sit there and go, people cross my boundaries all the time, my question is, have you articulated the boundary in the first place?
Mhm.
Because as an intuitive person, we tend to know where they are.
Mhm.
People that aren't as intuitive of us don't know. So
Mhm.
unless you actually set the boundary and say it out loud, often people don't know where that line is.
Mhm.
Then you might have to repeat it and just remind them. But the vast majority of people, I think, are pretty respectful. So once they understand it and you've given them an alternative to solve their problem outside of needing to rely on you, because I think that's also, we have to check our ego at the door. I like helping people with problems. So was it my problem with setting a boundary because it was feeding something for me? Or was it them compromising my boundary? It was
Mhm.
probably at the beginning a little bit of both, to be honest. So if I step back and go, well, actually, I know I'm doing a good job. I don't need to answer people's call after 6 o'clock unless something's on fire, which is
Mhm.
very rare. Uh, has happened, but not recently. Um, but the truth is, most people get really anxious. So I would go back and say, well, if I'm constantly in a reactive state, what have I not done proactively to solve that problem? And then if I put the proactive measures in place and they don't respect it, then are they the right client, or are they the right person, or are they the right thing? So
Yep.
then I could actually gracefully let go of that situation
Yep.
without resentment. And that was a way that I got my brain to be okay with boundaries. So
Mhm.
if people were compromising it, I'd check in and go, well, have I articulated it? Have I got a system in place to allow them to meet what their needs are without having to compromise that boundary? And then if they continue to compromise it after I had reminded them, then I would sit there and go, well, what message am I sending if I continue to allow that behavior to happen?
Mhm.
And I've never really had to call it out post that. I've never had to let go of a client for that reason, because I did
Nice.
this work over here.
Nice. Nice. And if you had to give your past self some advice and a tool, what would that tool be and what would the advice be?
Whoa. I think my current piece of advice would be around a bit more self-belief, because people sit there and go, oh my gosh, Kylie, you look so confident. Absolutely has not always been the case. uh, Scared of my own shadow. I actually recently caught up with some high school friends, and I don't really want to say how long ago that was because it makes me feel really old, but long time ago. And I was actually joking with them. I said, I think I was scared of my own shadow in high school. And for all of my people probably thought I was very extroverted and very confident. I actually was not at all. And so I think, Marianne Williamson says that your playing small does not serve the world.
Mm.
And, when you give yourself permission, then you in turn give others to do the same. And I think for so long, tall poppy syndrome is a very big issue in Australia, where if you are proud of yourself and you speak up about, I did a good job, you will get shot down in flames because that's considered arrogant and egotistical.
Mhm.
And so I think I associated me being proud of myself, even internally for a long time, as egotistical. But it's okay for me to go, you know what? I actually did a good job there. That's okay.
Mhm.
I don't need to necessarily shout it from the rooftops. I just need to be okay with myself. And so that piece of the work has been a really fundamental piece. So I would encourage people, the younger self, I would
Mhm.
say, you know, understand that you're okay as you are, even as you're on this journey for continuous improvement. It's not about that you're at a deficit. It's that you are great as who you are, but you want to be better. And I think that's a really beautiful journey to be on. But take a minute to acknowledge yourself right now.
Mm.
You are the sum of your experiences. So if you're where you are now, you've got some tenacity and grit because you're still here. So how do you just continue to evolve? But also, I think the energy audit people, places, situations, and conversations that give you energy versus drain your energy, because I think sometimes we get ourselves stuck in obligation
Mhm.
about, I need to keep doing this thing out of obligation. And my question is, why? So continue to do that audit and recognize that it will evolve over time, and that's actually okay. So if you outgrow somebody, that's okay.
Mhm.
If you
Mhm.
outgrow your environment and you need to go to different, that's okay. So
Mhm.
that, and it does, I think sometimes it feels lonely. So we go, oh my gosh, I must be doing something wrong. I think you're just finding your next level and your next level and your next level. And some people will come with you for the ride, and the vast majority won't. And I think it's okay. You've just got to be okay with yourself and know that you're on a journey to something better. And I think that's part of that piece. So I think the tool is the energy audit. And I think the advice is that you are okay as you are, and take some time to acknowledge yourself in this process.
Love it. Love it. Love it. I love it so much. Thank you so much for being here. Where can our listeners find you?
Yeah, so LinkedIn, Kylie, Kylee, thanks, Mum, Leota, and elements4success.com.au. You can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook, and I would love to connect, or my website, so www.elementsforsuccess.com.au. And I'd love to have a chat with you, book in a call.
Awesome. 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 Thank you so much for being on today. It was a pleasure to have you here. And to our listeners, thanks again for tuning in to another episode.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.